So I'm sure you've heard of these M.2 SSD enclosures. What I have over here is something very interesting and special that I wanted to check out. There are two M.2 SSD enclosures, but these are 2230 cases, which means they're extremely tiny that fit this tiny SSD. There's some extra interesting features that I'd like to test out as well.
Looking for a cheap way to license your Windows? Check out Dockcase through the links in the video description. Make sure to use the code TN20
to get 25% off. Use your preferred payment method including PayPal or bank card. Go to your orders and copy the key.
Paste the license to the activation settings and you're all done. This license is for Windows 10, but you can upgrade it to Windows 11 for free.
Or you can buy Windows 11 Pro key instead.
They also offer Microsoft Office 19 license. Use the same code TN20
to get 25% off.
Check out Dockcase.com in the video description below.
One of these is from Sharge. This is disk enclosure, and I've got the yellow version here. So as you can see, we've got this a little bit of a waterproof enclosure, and then the actual enclosure is this small. This is like a little lanyard, but this is also the USB Type-C cable. So if I open it up, as you can see, this becomes the Type-C cable. Then we've got some thermal pads. The cool thing is there is a little latch on the side here, and when you open it, I believe this way, you can just slide it like that and it comes off, and then you can just plug in this. I think you have to put the silicone thermal pad underneath first. Put this underneath there. Plug this in. Interestingly, this M.2 that I have here doesn't have any chips underneath, only on the top, but we put the thermal pad underneath, and then we just twist the back there, slide the glass back, and there we go. There is a tiny little fan underneath there as well, interestingly. So we can just plug this directly into our PC. Will this be recognized? Yeah, I can hear the fans going, and I could plug it in the other way as well. So you can see that the fan starts to go now. 3, 2, 1, go. And here it is. And interestingly, I can still use the other USB Type-C port there that's next to it. So if I've got another, look at that. Here's our drive info and smart info. Western Digital Black SN 771 terabyte. That's the one there. We can see the read and write totals, total host writes. So as you can see, we can see it's 13 terabytes has already been used. Crystal disk mark. Let's take a look at the temperatures. 47. So slowly going up. Let's see how do these temperatures manage this load. 1033 megabytes per second read. Let's see the end of the speed tests. So then, what just happened? We completed the test. As you can see, we are bound by the enclosure, not the NVMe inside. The NVMe inside is the Western Digital SN770M. If you want to check it out, I'm going to leave the link in the description below. I've got a review on the channel as well. That should get speeds of up to 5000 megabytes per second, which is 5 times slower what we're getting here, but that's not the point. The point is the actual enclosure. You can't get an enclosure that small that can actually transfer the speeds this fast, and the port as well. But with these synthetic speeds, I'm very happy with it. In terms of temperatures, we can see that the drive went up to 76 degrees on the NAND. The controller was 60 degrees, and then the drive was usually 60 as well. So it's actually not bad at all for temperatures like that. It is quite warm when I'm touching the drive. Nothing too bad. So let's check out how fast are we writing onto the SSD. So as you can see, we're writing, actually, if I take a file from desktop to this here, we're writing roughly around 480 megabytes per second. So it's not getting the full speed that we expected there. Now, I'm not sure why we're writing so slow onto it right now. Look at that, we're back to 300 megabytes per second. Okay, we're almost done now, and as you can see, we were roughly around 350 megabytes per second most of the time. Dipped down to about 90, but then at first over 500 megabytes per second. Now, I want to try it again in a different port. As you can see, we're pouring 550 megabytes per second. Let's see if we're going to do exactly the same thing. Pushing towards 600, and then now we're going all the way down. Yeah, it's going to do the same thing, but now goes back to 600-ish. Look at that. Now writing 600 megabytes onto it, and I turned the drive the other way so that the fan is underneath and pushing up and then probably comes out from this side. So perhaps the airflow is better, but look at that, we're pushing 630 megabytes per second write speeds. That's a lot faster than before. Here on disk, the SSD knows that it's 75% used. The 100% would be roughly around 1000 megabytes per second. For some reason, we're not getting it the write speed. In the second port, the other way around, we're getting faster speeds. I have one more trick that I'd like to try, which is the performance mode windows. I want to see if this is any different now. Seems like the performance mode didn't matter quite as much. Let's take a read speed from there, reading from the drive to the desktop, and look at that. Now we're reading 900, almost 1 gigabytes per second. 950, 970, 80. That's a very solid speed of reading. Now we can see that the USB disk is 100% used all the way to the top. It's not that bad of an up and down read speeds. Going roughly around the same. Our drives have gone up to 84 degrees. The NAND has gone, so that's quite hot because it's been small. The chassis is quite warm there as well. But we're done. Now, this drive can actually be put in this little kind of a water protective case. So if you pull this up like that, you can put this inside just like that. So this will go on the sides and this will go in. But now this is all closed space. So I am not sure what this fan is going to do there. There's going to be absolutely no, dissipation of air or anything. I guess this is just a protective case in terms of if you just want to drop the drive and, kind of keep it safe like that. But in terms of actual airflow or drive temperatures, this is going to be quite bad doing that. And once you've got this enclosure in there, you've got this latch, and you've got to have to use this cable now, like that. And we'll plug it in. Let's see if the fan... But it's going to be quite warm when we're going to do that. Let's take a look at the other case. So this is Dockcase, and this is the Pocket M.2 NVMe Smart SSD enclosure. Here's our enclosure. We've got a little bit of a screw in there, 10 gigabits per second. So that's up to 1250 megabytes per second, or somewhere around there. One USB Type-C cable, which is pretty cool, braided cable, 60 watt capable or rated there as well. Then we've got a little lanyard that you can put in the corner of this in there. I'm not going to do that. We've got a screw and a screwdriver. Undo this screw there. Ooh, look at that. That is slightly different than the other one. There is one thermal pad on the top there, and I believe I will have to take a film off it because maybe this will all still work there. This feels... I've never quite seen anything like that. Ah, there we go. Stupid me. Do not tear off. Well, okay then. Always read the manual first. Now this time, we do have the heatsink on of there. So when we plug the drive in there, I'll have to do this screw as well. This is a bit annoying because this is not magnetic. Our tiny little SSD is in there. This looks amazing because it's so small. And then all we have to do is just plug that one in, and this heatsink will be on top. But now you can see that this heatsink actually does make a little bit of a difference because there is metal on it, and I bet we're gonna get better speeds than before. Okay, so we're gonna take this film off this side, and there is a little button in there. I'm just gonna press this, see what happens. Nothing yet. This is quite a smart enclosure because you'll see once we plug this in here, okay, watch this. Oh, we have a little screen. The screen is a little bit dim, but what you can see over there is lots of interesting things. So when I long press the button on there, I can see SSD information. I'll try to show you this here as well. So I can see the power on hours. Okay, we can see some other things here. We can see connection. We can see read and write speeds. We can actually see total write capacity, what's been done in there. So like terabyte written specs. We can see temperature on the top left, tiny little bit. We can see voltage on that side. If we just short press it. On the top, as you can see, we are charging. So basically there is a little capacitor inside, which means that it's going to store a bit of energy in there. So in some way where we're still transferring data or reading the data and something happens with the power loss, that's still going to keep the power on the enclosure. So you're not going to lose any of your data if this was something like that. So as you can see, it's almost completely green or charged up there. It can see that this is 1 terabyte NVMe in there. It will give me even the name, Western Digital Black SN770M. It's a little bit of a dim display, but I can still read everything on there. SSD info. Look at that, I can read everything in there. Now, let's do the same thing now. I'm going to replace this. Remember, we went to 85 degrees or something like that in there. Now, I can feel that this bottom is getting quite warm now because this heatsink is actually properly working. Now let's do some write tests. Writing onto the drive. This enclosure is writing faster than the previous Sharge. I can see here we're writing 550 megabytes per second. I can read it from here or from the windows there, all the same. We're almost writing close to 700 in some of these points there. So it's keeping the drive much cooler than before. 78 peak. So far, what I have experienced is the same ports, and we're writing about 50 plus megabytes constantly higher just because it's a different enclosure than the previous one. This averages between 600 and 630 megabytes per second. Averages. The previous one went down to 300 and then 550, something like that. So sometimes a few hundred megabytes slower. So this is definitely faster and better in terms of the heatsink capabilities as well. Look, we peaked at 78, but now we've gone down to 75 and we've done the write speed. That was pretty solid. And now reading from the drive, look at that. 978. The read speeds are roughly about the same. Very close to 1 gigabytes per second. As you can see, sometimes it flicks to 0.98 gigabytes per second. Dips down to 890 now. But interestingly, we've gone to the same temperature, 83 degrees, 84 degrees. So temperature wise, it doesn't look like one is necessarily better than the other one. I feel like this one is doing a better job just because where the heatsink for the NVMe is on the top, so I can actually feel this heating up and taking some of the heat, rather than in there was a little active fan, but it was blowing on the other side of the NVMe, which wasn't as good. I want to see what happens if I pull it out just before the end. See, on the protection, can you see that? It was safe ejection. So I want to see what happens now if I put this one back, detecting SSD, boom, and then now you can see it's charging up the capacitor there again. So that protects you from your data corruption or anything that going wrong, that little capacitor. Now this is a little bit more expensive than this Sharge one, but I think if you care about the safety of your data and that little bit of protection, I think this is pretty cool little case, the Dock Plus one. In terms of the NVMe's inside, you don't actually have to go with the Western Digital SN770M because that is a Gen 4 drive and it is really, really fast. But we're not actually getting these speeds in there. You can go with some of the lower ones as well. I'm going to leave some more budget alternatives in the description below if you want to get some of these drives. I'm going to pause the recording of this Blackmagic and I want to see if I can actually write onto this SSD the rest of this Blackmagic. So you can actually see the write speed of this. So I'm writing this 12:1 raw compression of B-raw onto it, 79 megabytes per second, which is pretty cool. That's a really cool thing to actually see while your camera is recording and seeing that, yeah, the write speed of it is completely fine and it seems working all right. I'm going to keep it there. So usually I am using these Sabrent M.2 Enclosures for writing onto my Blackmagic files, and then I'm sure you've seen the video on the channel. I'm using these Western Digital Blue SN550s. I've used them for years now, still going, so I'm gonna keep recording onto them, but this is still recording. I can see it there and I'm super happy with it. If you're asking me which one of these is better, I think the Dockcase one is better just because of the cooler. I like the Sharge one. I think this is so small. This is probably the smallest one you can get. So if you're looking for ultra small portability, then this is your guy. I'm gonna leave some links in the description below. And as always, hit like and subscribe if you'd like to see more content like this. I'll meet you in the comment section below. And if you do want to reach out to me, reach out in Minect, which will be in the description below. Thanks guys for watching. Bye-bye.